Hello, chess friends. This is chess coach Valeri calling, and I'm really sorry about the long delay. There seems to be a problem even now. There seems to be some sort of a problem with my computer. I do hope you can see the screen and you can hear me loud and clear, though, because the problem seems to be quite big, and I think that it wasn't working until up to a minute ago. So today we're going to be talking about dynamic sacrifices, and I would like to just make sure that everybody could hear me all right, and there is a good sound coming through. So if there is, then that's wonderful. So we can actually get started. My screen is flashing over here, so the chessboard is flashing. Okay, I can live through that somewhat, but I don't know what the problem is really. I hope it's not flashing to you too. If it does flash, just message it on the chat, and then I'll try to restart. But it's just being horrible. I don't know what's. I'm not sure what actually is just happening right now. Anyway, so I'm going to start with a few very instructive examples for today. And then basically, the first one that I would like to begin with, I'm going to open it up right now. Just give me only 1 second. Okay, so I do hope that you don't see the way the screen I'm seeing it. Up here, it is flashing extremely much. I'll try to handle with the board. I think this is my problem, so don't worry about it. So we're going to start with a game that was played by Robert Fischer. Robert Fischer versus Rubinetti. Now, this is a brilliant example of what a sacrifice is and how you can make it. So this is the best way for me to begin this lecture. And I wanted to first to tell you that if you are looking for a way to play really good sacrificial chess, like make sure that you do the right sacrifice, that you learn more about that, you can check the link beneath the video, which offers 50% off the so-called Lenderman Method. So you can actually take a look at this. It's a really good training tutorial. So let's talk about this game that is, I believe, so interesting. Fischer was ultimately playing with white in this game, and he began the game with e4, c5, knight f3, and pawn to d6. So essentially white plays d4, and as black exchanged and white recaptured, he went into the so-called Scheveningen variation, where black after knight f6, white plays knight c3, pawn to e6, and white did bishop to the c4. Now, there's nothing so special about that line, with exception of the fact that all that white is looking for is a very active development. I mean, this is really the beginning of it. It's a very good start. It's a good point to begin like that. And, of course, the d5 is well covered. So this is how it begins. Now, essentially, after that last move that happened, bishop to c4, black has to pick up how to continue. And what he did in the game is basically to play with a6. Now, there's nothing so interesting. We have no sacrifices here, so this is just development. b5, short castles, bishop b7, rook e1. And it's just this type of easy development for the pieces. Like, really, white setting up his own play and pieces towards the middle, and black sort of trying to do the same, I guess, in this case. And then essentially white can think of a move like bishop to the g5 or queen to the e2. There are different ways on how white can try to improve and set up his own game. So after the last move, rook to the e1, black chose to play knight bd7. And upon that, white simply continued with bishop to the g5. There is nothing more important by white for white, than the ability to more or less just set out his pieces and move them onto more advanced, capable positions like the pin that is being created now against the f6 knight. It actually just stands out as a very consistent type of development. And this is really what we need oftentimes in the beginning. You don't need a perfect development. I mean, you do. But more importantly, what you do is you need a consistency. So that sort of development that white is getting here is really good because it can help him to get the queen on e2, the rook on the d1, and little by little acquire the kind of control that will help him to attack. So it is a good start, essentially. Now, there comes a very interesting question after h6 and knight c5, the way black played it. Now, Bobby Fischer himself had this wonderful, I'd say, really good development being created. But then there is an even bigger question. How do you take that and really actually get to realize certain possibilities with it? How do you do something? And this was a very huge question because it doesn't look like White's got the actual preparation to deliver a whole lot of threats or attacks, and yet he needs to figure out how to do something very similar. So what I want you to do, guys, is to think about this position and tell me, what should White do at this point? So what is White's best way to go for it? Do you think that White should actually try to advance and open up the position against the Black King? Or do you actually think that he should try to develop his pieces a little bit more? Try to express your opinion on the chat, and then I will comment if you're right or if you're wrong about that. This is interesting. It's keep in mind that it is a good position to talk about, mostly because of White's excellent setup. The setup is great. It's just that what we need to do is to find out if, besides that, nice setup, we could also deliver some sort of an attacking possibility or a challenge or threat of any kind against Black. It isn't easy, but what do you guys think? What should White do? Now, f4 is not a bad suggestion. Thank you for suggesting it. It's just the problem is that Black will likely develop his bishop on e7, and I think that this will help him quite a bit. Not only that he's going to have this very simple bishop development coming up pretty straight, but then he's just going to go for short castles, and he's going to have this, easy game. I got to say that it's a really easy game. He'll do it this way. He's going to cast a short. He will enjoy the further control that this is going to give him. While I'm certainly not against the idea, I think that, you see, when you have a good development, you must try to use that good development by setting up certain threats against your opponent. Now, if you don't set the threats against your opponent, you're not going to get any attack. You're going to try to get an attack, but the reality is that your opponent will already have developed, and he would have already have his pieces well set and in line, so that you can't really deliver too much. So what was important is to make something strong. We could do queen f3, but that doesn't pose a problem. You'd still develop. Even e5, you'd exchange and still develop. So there comes the brilliant bishop d5 that Fischer picked up to do. And this was wonderful. Fischer figured out that the only way to engage anything in this position is by actually offering a bait. Now, when you're offering a sacrifice, I guarantee you, it will look just as cool as the move of bishop d5 looks. It looks wonderfully beautiful. You also need to understand that before committing to a move like this, you got to ask yourself a very important question. And the question that you got to ask yourself has to be, what, so it's very important, so don't forget it, what is the follow-up? Do I have a follow-up? Now, the follow-up could be anything, starting from a win that you have, in case if it's a tactical sacrifice, or if it is a positional sacrifice, it's likely going to be a strong pressure versus our opponent. However, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're actually turning this into something that will engage the opponent in responding to your moves, in defending against your challenges, as opposed to developing his pieces. And that is what White wanted to do with them. Now, how is that forcing Black to feel engaged? Well, if Black plays bishop d7, there was going to be the exchange, was knight c6, things like that. That would have been pretty painful. For example, White taking this piece and then knight d5. That would have been incredibly painful for Black to experience. And of course, in case black takes now, there could be edicts to the D, and if he still doesn't take, I mean, this not only that black now he's lost his dark square bishop, but he would get these incredible weaknesses around the king side, so white can do moves like queen f3 and all that type of stuff. So you could see it's not just the bishop d5. I mean, bishop d5 is just a tool, but what's happening next is pretty awesome. Now black is in a deep, deep trouble, and there's hardly anything that he can do. So what's so interesting is that black took on d5 with the pawn, and then after capture, surely due to knight f5 in response to bishop e7, black couldn't allow himself to do that, so he played king d7. And I want to know, how would you carry on the attack right now? Now, I just got a comment of intermediate players are afraid of sacrificing for positional gain. That is true and not true. Some people are afraid. Other people just really get very much into heart the idea of sacrificing because it looks good. And you have to understand that while sometimes it's a good idea to do it, sometimes it's a bad idea. Again, it's all about the follow-up. So the question is, what is white's best follow-up right now? Think about it yourself and come up with your best shot, your best suggestion. What should white try to do right now? Mhm. Very interesting. Let's see. What do you have? Okay, B4. Yes, that's right. B4. Because this is an actual threatening move. This is how we're looking to do in this position. The most valuable in a position of that kind is to always find a move that sort of startles the opponent. It makes him to worry. And this is what really matters. Like, really beautiful move of by white, just actually setting up for another attack. Now, here is what I call the follow-up. The follow-up is the continuation to our attack. But more importantly, what it is a way for you to constantly force your opponent into what I would call a state of unrest. Literally, what you want to do is you want to constantly make him to worry again and again and again. And when you create those problems, or let's say when you create those threats, what is going to happen is that he will have to respond or defend against you, as opposed to managing his own development and his own pieces in a good way. And this is what you really want to achieve. Create a set of threats or problems, thereby just making his possession or his game more difficult. And it's beautiful that way, because like after the move of pawn up to the b4, he doesn't have much. And so this is how it starts. So like b4 is a brilliant way. And by the way, those are simple ideas. You could use them in any game. It's just that most people don't know about them. Like when they sacrifice, they expect an immediate win. Or when they sacrifice, they don't see an immediate win. They say, oh, this is wrong. See, it's not like that. Now, one of you asked, okay, so let's see, why not bishop to e7 to defend the check? Because of knight f5. You would have lost that bishop. What is the reason that we rarely see sacrifices on top boards? Well, strong grandmasters don't allow them. But, you're not going to be playing that many strong grandmasters. So a lot of your opponents are likely going to. It's just up to you to find out if there is a good sacrifice or not. Another question that you have: how do you decide if a sacrifice is going to give you enough positional advantage or just leave you at a disadvantage materially? I think that it's always going to leave you at a disadvantage materially. It's about how much of a compensation you get. And that's what I mean by the follow-up. If you have a good sequence of threats that you can make against the opponent, it's going to help. If not, it's not. So I'm a club player. How can I improve my game and beat players? How does they attack straight away in the opening? How do I stop them? Well, think about this. Before white attacks, he actually set up a brilliant, preparation. His pieces were brilliantly prepared. Now imagine a move like bishop d5 if the rook wasn't on e1. That wouldn't have worked. Not only that black could punish it, but in general, he could have proven that this is not even a possibility to consider. So if somebody doesn't have the enough preparation and he attacks you like that, well, you have to figure out how to punish him, or just take the material and defend. If, however, you think about starting something like that, you got to ask yourself, what's your quality? What's your advantage? If there is not enough of a quality, if there is not enough of an advantage, you don't do it. So if your opponent is doing it and he's fully prepared, and perhaps this is you going wrong somewhere earlier. But in any case, it is always the follow up. And that doesn't mean necessarily constantly just punching him at one move after another. You see two quiet moves now, c4 and queen takes a4. But those moves strengthen white's position and get that grip against black even higher. Now, guys, I have a question for you. What would you do with this queen? Are you going to say that white should move his queen right back? Or are you going to say that white should actually try to, I don't know, blockade? Or are you going to say that you shouldn't do any of that stuff? Just like, let's, I don't know, do something else. What do you think is white's best response at this point? Okay, so he surely needs high calculation skills. I don't think he does all the time. I mean, obviously you need to know how to calculate and you need to be good at it, but high calculation skills, not really. See, it's more about evaluating the position and seeing, like certain things. It's just not about calculating too long. How can we make a dynamic sacrifice, one of you asked, when the opponent is playing close opening, like close type? Well, I mean, again, is it worth it? Is it worth the sacrifice? Are you getting enough for it? If not, no. Knight c6, good suggestion. But you see, by playing knight c6, not only that white wasn't going to create a threat, but he also wasn't going to make any real problem. He wasn't going to pose any real problem over black's position. That's why white didn't actually do this. It's a very interesting decision. Instead of just jumping forward and then trying that type of a variation. And what we have to do is to consider simple moves like queen to b3. Because after queen to the b3, things look better. It makes things look better. The queen is down. Maybe we can think of a move like rook c1, and then there could be the move of pawn to c5. Step by step, white is relying on the most powerful thing that determines if an attack is right or wrong. Rook e8 couldn't have happened. He would have taken it. But the only thing that actually determines if your attack is right or wrong, don't forget that, is the pressure. Now, how much pressure can I create against my opponent's position? How much? Sometimes it's going to be just enough. Sometimes it's going to be a little too small. But either way, it's always about that. Do I have the pressure? The pressure allows you to stay in a strong attacking position and keep your opponent in the state of unrest. The reality is that after queen to the b3, g5, and then bishop to the g3, white is holding black in the difficult position, in the impossible almost kind of situation with all those troublesome pieces. And so now there could be moves like rook to the c1. There could be ideas like c5, and there could be more going on as the game progresses. And it is beautiful to watch. Now, backward move, isn't that going to be a good? I think it is important because it's a transitional move. It's going to keep the queen around in a different place. Is bishop to the d5 giving nothing positional? No, it gives him a lot of space, a lot of lines. Those are all important positional features. And now, after black played knight h5, white has an important decision to make. How to get this play here, or get this position, into something that really matters. Keep in mind, white has a tremendously good looking position with the rook, with the knight. I mean, I love that position. I'd love to be white here, honestly. But there is this one question. How do we turn this into something big or something really important? It's not easy. Not saying it is. Just keep looking. This is the question now. E8 is guarded by the... Yes, it is. Yes, it is guarded by the queen. I agree. If it's guarded by the queen, it could be very difficult to reach out there or do something. Whatever it is that you want to do. C5. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. That's the move. Because this is the kind of move which immediately creates the big problem to black. And the big problem is, how do you keep your position or the position of your king open? Truth is, you don't. The idea behind it is that as soon as actually the move opponent to the c5 happened, black realizes, hey, I'm losing it here. I don't have the defenses no more to hold on to this. The most interesting part is when we actually start creating circumstances. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times people would just say, oh, well, I'm fine. No, you're not. Creating the circumstances is the big idea that allows you to continue adding pressure. It's like, in art, we often say that, like a good story, comes out of drama and at the same time creates drama. So essentially, it comes out of conflict and creates conflict. Now in chess, a good attack comes out of the attack and creates more. It comes out of the attacking position and creates more pressure, more attacking possibilities against the opponent. So you have to constantly keep your opponent on the verge of, losing. Pretty much. That's how you keep his attention. That's how you keep him defending instead of doing his own stuff. So after the move c5, we got c6 coming up as a big threat. And you see how every single move is super energetic. Tao was a master of sacrifice, but if analyzes games with engine, 60% were wrong. So what is the benefit of such type of sacrifice? Okay, first of all, engines are no good. Engines are playing different kind of chess, and engines are superior than any of us. If you take an amateur engine of a 2300 Grandmaster master level, and that's an engine that was like, what, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Or a modern engine on that level, it's probably going to be the Grandmaster. You cannot compare a human to in his emotions, his abilities to think, as opposed to the computer, because humans think differently. Humans do not calculate precise. Humans think based on intuition. They think based on the experiences that they've had before. If you take a computer, all it does is to calculate thousands of lines in a second. Humans don't think like that. Okay, like if you try to calculate thousands of variations in a second, then you go to take a Nobel Prize. If you do that, you're probably superhuman. Essentially, we think more in, okay, does that line connect with my plan? Does it help me to get strong pressure? Now, can you explain how you come to that conclusion? No. But essentially, that's how we think. So don't look into engines to help you evaluate your chess. Only look at them if you want to analyzing an opening, or if you're actually looking at, all right, did I make a blunder or not? Because that's what they can show you. They can give you some great moves, but remember, a lot of them are not for you to find. It's impossible to think like a computer or compare to a computer. So actually, what black did was d6 to the c, bx to the c, and then there's c6 coming up, which is brilliant. And computers don't get nervous. Yeah, exactly. So after the exchange takes, and then there's queen takes to the d5. And now, does anybody give an idea on how? Does anybody have an idea on how I can, well, do his stuff, so to speak, against black's position right now? Keep in mind, white is doing a pretty good job already. So he is just supposed to find out a way to finish him off. Now, what should white do now? Anyone? Rook e8, b takes to c5. Okay, well, I think rook e8 is good, but then black will likely block it with queen king d7. So that doesn't, no, it doesn't look so good unless you actually figure out a follow up to that. What's the follow up? Like, what if queen takes? No, certainly we don't do queen takes to b7 because that would likely just lose our queen for no reason. No, we don't do that. Rook e8, king d7. I'm not going to move it on the board, but okay, I appreciate your suggestion. What's going to happen though? That is the real big question. So if we play rook e8 and then he comes up with his king on d7 challenging our rook, it really is all about that. So what do we do after his king comes out in d7? Check, king d7. Then what? Okay, then what do we do? c6. I don't think so. He's going to take the rook with king takes to e8. No, no c6. So rook e8, king d7. Take a moment to think about this position. Rook e8, king d7. This is the big situation right now. What to do after that? It's an important question, very important question. And also the other thing that I find very interesting is that right after we do it, like rook e8, king to the d7, got to figure out, okay, what's the queen a4? Beautiful. Thank you so much. There it is. Rook e8, king d7, queen a4 check. Now the black king really doesn't have any place to go. We have given him the check, the forcing attack that's pretty strong. And then in case black plays with bishop c6, we can do knight takes to the c6. So now black is losing. In case of queen takes to the c, there's rook d1, and then we kill his queen. In case he plays anything like, let's say, king takes d8, I could very easily kill black off. I mean, how do we do that? It's so many moves. It's rook e1. There is like a check, and then we can win the queen. It's impossible for him to escape. And so what's so amazing about this position, it was just really the start of it, where black violated the principle. Instead of developing normally or playing out his bishop or so, he actually played knight c5, and then white effectively take advantage of this by moving bishop d5. And so from this point on, the sacrifice that white made was always based on that little idea. How do I create more problems? How do I make more threats and more challenges? It was wonderful that way. It was really good. And it worked. That was the best of all things. Yeah, there's no there's no problem, there's no complication. And it was great. So yeah, the little concept, the little principle, oftentimes really comes to that, and you want to be aware of a couple of these questions, so to speak, when you start making your own analysis and your own tactics. What's my follow up? Do I have a good pressure? Do I have the chance to create more threats as I go along, so that essentially that could keep the flow of my attack and possibilities that I'm looking for? When you ask yourself those questions and you answer them, you will know if the sacrifice or the attack are being working, or you will know if they don't. So now let's take a look at another example. Before that, by the way, I'd like to encourage any one of you who want me to send you some parts of these games, like the PGN with the analysis and everything. Just please do so. Now, you can actually do this to my email, which is valeri.lilov@gmail.com, or you can do that on my website, tigerlilov.com. You can actually send me your question, or yeah, I will. I know, or maybe just bring up your like request for me to send you these games. They're pretty instructive games, and I can send you them with my annotations. Now, let's talk about another instructive game. By the way, while I'm loading in, Don't forget, beneath the video, for only a few hours, you can actually get 50% off the top Grandmaster Lenderman Method. Grandmaster Lenderman is actually talking a lot about dynamic chess principles and all these little things that I'm trying to explain here in a short form. He's really talking them in depth. So if you want to learn from that, don't forget to check out the link, and you can get his training package for an incredibly cheap price. So let's have a look now at another game. This game was played between Shahryar Mamedyarov and Ante Brikic. This was a great game because there's just so much to learn from it. And I'm a big fan of Madyarov's creative, like chess, so to speak, because he's really one of the best, most creative players I've seen. I love, his games, especially when he wins. He's just so good. So basically, Mamedyarov was playing with white, and it started with d4, d5, and then it was c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, e3, and e6. Now, some would say that this is a very quick way of playing this opening, and probably it's not going to bring so much of an advantage. Okay, knight f3, black, actually knight bd7. But what I like about it is how white is actually able to set out his pieces. And now, I'm curious, what would you guys think white should do? I want you to think very carefully here. So white's got a very nice development, and what should white do? See, I think overall, we are not supposed to be doing anything big, at least not at this point. But you might still want to think, because especially if you could do something, saying you would, but if you do, it could help you big time. And the white knew that. He figured that out. So how? What is the most effective way to take advantage or to continue here? Anybody? C5, not a great move. You see, if you do this is going to miss the pressure on d5. So we don't want that. We could do g4, but no, that's way too early, I think, for now. e4, brilliant. This move is crazy looking at first, and most people will be like, "Oh, no, 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 no! I'm not doing it. I'm not going forth with a break on the king on the center while I have my pieces on development." You know what? You will be right. But oftentimes, especially if you want to fight for advantage, you might want to consider those kind of moves. And while you certainly don't have to play them, considering them means that you might actually find some of those very important, just like white did. With the move of pawn to e4, white got into the position to open. And so, ultimately, after black exchanged, okay, this is very interesting here. After he took, then there was knight x to the e4, knight x to the e4, queen takes to the e4, pawn to e5. And now black decided, okay, you know what? You have actually done something really bad. You have opened up the position, and I'm going to counter you. I'm going to prove that you did wrong, and I'm going to seize the opportunity and basically challenge you quickly. And it was a very interesting moment because it almost looks like white actually made a mistake, It almost looks like it. Now the question is, did he really make a mistake? Or maybe it wasn't that bad? The answer to that question is, well, yes. Yes, what? Yes, it wasn't that bad. And yes, it does look like there is a mistake. So, truth be told, you cannot open up the position without having any preparation or anything else to back it up. And yet, white did it, and he was pretty successful with it. Why? I want you to understand this very important concept that adds the possibility of an exception. When you think of a sacrifice, or you think about any kind of attack, especially when you think about opening advantage, One of the most important things that determines those is the concept of space. Now, hardly any books mention the idea of space in its realistic form. They usually speak about it like, oh, you get to have your pawns advance and you're going to get space. And are you okay? That's fine. But there is a much deeper reason behind the idea or concept behind the idea of space. After the move of e5, white already had more space, and essentially that allowed him to make a move or to make a sequence that proved him wrong, him right, as opposed to black's very good looking decision of, okay, why not? Why shouldn't I be able to punish you for breaking the principles? The concept of space. Now, bishop f4 works, but then black will just do rook e8, and he will be attacking. Now, I agree that it may not be a bad move. I think that it's actually a fine move. But I want you to think very carefully about the position at hand right now. What is white's best way to go? Should he choose to, I don't know, attack in some way? Or should he choose to do something different? I want you to think, and I want you to come up with the best suggestion you possibly can. What's white's best idea at this point? Question. Very good question. Take a second. Think about it yourself. What should white do now? Bishop g5, not a bad idea. Black would likely do f6 though. If we continue in this way, he'll play f6, and as you could probably realize, taking with the e pawn will lead to rook 8. I don't like that. It's not going to work. It will be pretty bad to see this, and the sequence is going to be pretty bad too. So we can't quite make this work. Something else needs to happen. I'd like to tell you this. Don't look for anything that's special or big in a position like that. Just keep thinking about what you can get, like what sort of advantage or attacks or possibilities you can get right now. So what should white do? Anyone? Bishop d3, yeah, that's fine. Knight g5 is okay, although I think that black will likely do g6, so there's nothing. Bishop d3, same thing. You know, f6, e6 is fine, although black would do this. Actually, white took the bishop. Wow. I mean, this is the first reaction that I had when I had like looking at this. Like, why? Really? White's just giving away his queen? Wow. That's crazy, man. You know, that's the first reaction that I have, and it's a pretty good reaction. I mean, like, really, rook e8, like, we're having no development whatsoever, and yet white says, I don't care. Let me just sacrifice my queen because I like you. And this is a pretty crazy move. You know, basically, it is a pretty crazy move. So, what's going on here? The truth is that as this move appears, as this move happens, white knows the value of the actual attack. And so this is a very interesting kind of position, because it doesn't matter where or what black will do. The important thing is he's going to stay behind. And so after edicts to the d6, I want you to check this very carefully. White can make a crazy sacrifice with no preparation just because he is able to control more space. A lot of people do not connect the concept of space with the concept of a sacrifice. But the truth is that's the one thing that could guarantee you to ultimately lead a successful attack. Crazy indeed. Absolutely. I can't agree more. It's a crazy indeed. But think about this. I think it was Kasparov who once said that every piece has its own relative value. And the relative value of the piece actually depends on what it can do. Like in terms of the queen is 9 pawns, right? But it's only 9 points when it can actually do something. When you feel like, oh, this queen can go there and oh, it can do that, then it's 9 points. Then it's 100% of its power. But imagine the same thing, the same idea, but this time we have the queen somewhere else. Okay, it's not going to be 9 points, and that is a very interesting way to think about it. It's probably playing much less than any of the white bishops, knight, and the rooks. Now, with that in mind, I'm not suggesting you, hey guys, look at just your queens. If your queens don't do anything, sacrifice them. You'll be better without them. No, of course, but I just want to show you an expressive version on how that concept works. Now, take a look at what white is able to do with the next moves. Longside castle is b5. Now c5 connects the pawns, adding much more value to the pawn in d6. And then he's able to carry that forward with the move of bishop g5. Now the idea is that there's rook he1 and also there's a challenge against the knight. Black moved the knight back and white played rook e1. So the bishop comes down. Well, black just didn't want to let white to come right in. So so how do we play right now? Now, one of you asked, if I played this against the 2000 FIDE, I can expect to win. Perhaps if you play it right. The pass pawn will be blocked. The pass pawn is blocked. But the real reason why we're actually doing it is not to promote the pass pawn. It's to keep the opponent's pawn against it. This position almost seems like these, I am very, very scared when I don't even get to watch them. Like imagine like those people who walk at the edge of a very tall building. I think there was a girl who did that, and it became very popular. Like a few days ago, and like they do it without actually wearing anything to protect them, and they still do it. I mean, this is I don't like this, but it kind of reminds me of this. Like we just sacrificed the queen for almost anything. So like one bad step, one wrong step, and then we can fall, and it's going to be a really bad fall. So think about that. You don't want to do this, but yet in your games you can do a little bit of that on a much lower scale. Like for example, when you sacrifice a pawn, or when you basically give away an exchange to get a similar kind of initiative. However, looking at these positions helps you to understand even the concepts that work at such a radical sacrifice that isn't supposed to work in most cases. Now, should we play bishop takes b5? Maybe, but then black's going to just do knight takes to c5. So no, remember, the big deal here is to keep the pressure on. Now, that's what we're really looking for. It's not about finding some huge move or a break against the opponent. It is just that one concept. Can I keep the pressure over my opponent or I can't? If you can do this, you're good. If you can, you're not good. So white figured out I've got to rely mostly on this one thing, creating more pressure and holding it against the opponent. So there actually was a way to do this. And the way to do this was with the move that white played next. Well, I suppose you've already come up with some suggestion. So white played bishop e3. I was waiting until the last second before I show you because you'd probably never expect me to show you a move like this. It's a transitional move. Now, I always speak on how bad the backward moves are, but some of them are necessary because the truth is we're going to use these squares as a transition. Ultimately, white wanted to protect the bishop and the pawn at the same time. But more importantly, he had a different purpose for the bishop on that square. When you use a backward square to reposition a piece, it's only going to be bad for a move or two. And if you figured it out, like if you're a 2700 rated player, for example, you can allow yourself that. So now that knight d4 leads white up to knight f5. And I want you to check out how white even delivers an exchange. The craziest thing to do is to exchange when you are material down. White isn't just a material down, he is a queen down, and he's exchanging more pieces. How crazy is that? Tell me. Why is he doing it? Well, the reason, I mean, the very simple reason why he's doing it is because he knows that by exchanging the important pieces, he's going to leave black with pretty much nothing to do. And so, with that in mind, there's really no reason for us to worry, you know? Yeah, there isn't. It's actually pretty good if we make it happen beautifully. After the move of bishop takes the c5, as it is done here, it becomes pretty much impossible for black to hold on to the qualities. Like after bishop takes the c, black played bishop e6, and I want you to think about this situation yourself. It's very dangerous. Yes, I agree. But think about this. How much value, how much percentage does the black queen have right now? Very little. So I think in its own way, white was right. This queen is not playing even remotely half of that strength or half of that power. So we don't have to worry. I mean, come on, you do. But I don't have to worry. I'm not making it. So anyway, basically, what does white have to do now? How does he keep going and keep progressing his position and his attack at this from this very moment? Which is a big question, you know. It's a very important question in my opinion. Anyone? Now, what if you asked, okay, so, uh, like, I get the same feeling watching this as Walking Dead. Actually, that's not so scary, you know? It's boring sometimes, but yeah, okay. If you're getting the creeps of the Walking Dead, then perhaps yeah, it's not that scary though. So how do we know when this type of sacrifice will work? If you have two things: strong pressure or a good follow up, actually. So that's the idea, and that's the whole concept. Like f4, brilliant, thank you. That's it. Black's got only one active piece, and we're ready to get it out. We have that piece going away, so that now our rook is going to follow through, and we know that this is going to be good. Small move, but we have the time. And that's another issue I want to talk to you about. Time. How do you know if you've got enough time? You have enough time when you could see that your opponent cannot do anything that dangerous. If you feel like you could do something very dangerous, you probably don't want to go that way. But if you don't see any big dangerous moves, then you got it. And that's a pretty big idea in this position because we got it. Now with white does not have to worry because there is nothing scary coming by black. And so a little move of f4 seems to do right in play. So then like black plays g6 and white even jumps out with g4. Bishop takes g4 and rook d4. What the hell are we doing? Why did we give away that pawn? Now I want you to understand this type of thing. White didn't give away the pawn because he was cool doing so. I mean, it was kind of cool. I mean, who can just give away a pawn and say, yeah, look at me, I'm just giving my pawns because I've got plenty of them. But you need to understand that there is another concept. Another interesting concept is basically this: the idea that you need to open a second front. Now, let me clarify it like that. If you start attacking on a single area and you start attacking there, right? Your opponent is going to do what I would call defense. Like he's just going to defend in some way or do whatever. Now, that one area sounds interesting, but it's never going to feel enough. It's never going to feel like you've got the perfect side that you can play on. And this is where it gets tricky. And I want you to consider the second concept. The second concept ultimately is when you think of another area of the board where you can start playing. And that is important because once you pick up that second area, it's going to be brilliant. It is going to tear your opponent's position apart for the simple reason that he can't hold the defense on both of these sides. So with the idea of black's bishop coming down right now, genuinely, black's in trouble. And genuinely, we're not. That's a great move. It keeps on coming. Oh, yeah. That was a perfect move, and it was actually very interesting in this position because, after the move of pawn f4, and then there's the move of like bishop to the e6. Now, what white is playing, I probably gave you enough time to figure it out. f5. Tao lives. Yeah, if Tao played that game, I bet you'd be very impressed. I would be too. I mean, wow. I mean, I'd love seeing Tao play that position. But I don't mind Mamedyarov playing it either. It was a pretty good game. So f5 coming in, right in, perfect. He was just as good as it could get. And yeah, so like after the move f5, g takes f, there's rook g1 check, king h7, rook d g4, queen f8, and bishop to the d4. And it is beautiful because we got like 4 of our pieces instantly moving against the black terrible king. And he's got pretty much no way of defending himself against it. It was wonderful. Forget the rest. What you really need to do is just to concentrate on getting all that firepower against your opponent. Does it take time to do it? Oh, of course it does. If it was easy, like it would have been super, super simple. But it was necessary and beautiful at the same time. So what's coming in here is that we see the black queen literally struggling with his last sense of power to really deal with everything that white's got to get prepared against it. And it's just not possible. It's not coming through. So what white's pieces are just amazing. And that's what this position is all about. Bishop d4, then there was f6, rook to the g6, rook d8, and rook takes f6. A hit against the black queen, a pretty big threat that's coming out immediately, and no way on how black could really just step out in this and do anything differently. It was wonderfully played. It was really, really good here. And so, yeah, though that's the way it is. This is the real direction. It's a beautiful move, little to nothing that black can do, and yeah. One of the big things about a position of this kind is think of it like, okay, what do you need to do? You need to create more threats. But it's not easy to create more threats. So oftentimes just that one thing that you need to do is going to be open. Exchange the pawns, take out the pieces, and then coordinate whatever is left. And so white had this wonderful way of doing it in no time. So after rook f6, rook to d8, rook takes f6, black resign. If he moves away to queen somewhere, we've got, I guess, even rook g7. I mean, look at this. There's a take, and there's like 2 bishops that black just doesn't really seem in condition to stop. There's 2 bishops in the pawn. It's just wonderful. It's like a really great idea in this position, and the sequence that's coming out of this is wonderful too. What I love about each of these possibilities out there is how white was really able to do this in literally seconds. He was able to get those pieces right up there, keep the pressure on, and with every single one of those moves, never allow black to prove that his development matters. It was great because of those pieces. It was great because of this preparation. About black, well, he didn't get it. He didn't get to do anything to fight back. I hope you really like this example, and it shows you the domination of pieces, the pressure that the player can apply, and more importantly, how that can help you to become that successful in your own games and sacrifices. If you want me to send you those games, please don't forget to write me an email, or actually just so visit my website on valeri.lilov@gmail.com, or just tigerlilov.com too. I'm going to answer a couple of questions, and let's see, what do you guys have as a question? All right, so first question is, okay, number one, why why would the king go to the H file to get trapped? Well, where could it go? Okay, I mean, if he goes to the F8, then we have D7, and that's not working. What about if the idea of rook H takes H6, king takes F6, and bishop H7? Well, that works too, but I mean, I think we could just go for it. I mean, there's so many moves you can do, you know. In any case, don't forget to check the link below the video because it's only available for a few more hours. The Lenderman Method. It's a brilliant training package. You might find it very good. I also send a link on the chat itself. Uh, Again, I'm sorry about the delay today. We had a technical problem with the servers, so I hope everything worked out. However, during this webinar, and I'm going to talk to you next Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great one, and I wish you all a nice weekend.